Hi, happy Monday, everyone. Here we are for Tech Tip Q&A. I'm going to wait for everyone to get here and wait for Christina. There she is.
Hi, everybody. Happy Monday.
Hey, happy Monday, everyone. I'm going to wave at everybody. All right. So, here we are. Welcome back. It is the third Monday of the month. My name is Sarah Walworth.
My name is Christina McGrath. We're knitting tech editors.
And every Monday or every third Monday we get together live here on Instagram to answer your questions about patterns, knitting,
pattern
what
writing, knitwear design, tech editing, any of those kinds of things that we deal with in our job.
yes. And we're here because we want to be a help and because we would like to offer our skills and our knowledge to you guys. So if you have a question for us, toss it into the comments below, and we'll do our best to answer them. We've also received some questions via email and instant message that we'd like to address today too, some great questions. And if you guys have anything in particular that you want to know about, if you're a tech editor or a knitting designer and you've got this burning question that you really want to get an answer for, we'll try our best to answer for you. What do you think, Christina? Are we ready to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, like at any time, if you have questions either about what we're talking about based on the questions we already got or just a new question, throw it in, we'll check them.
Yeah. All right, so I printed mine up.
I
I'll
did too.
Okay, so I guess Christina and I are paper people.
So much.
We're
Here's my
so
pencil.
bad.
So much paper, people.
We print stuff up and then work from paper a lot.
A lot.
Okay, so we had the first question that we got was from Karen, and she said she has a question regarding buttons on a deep V cardigan or jacket that's worked bottom up. How high should the band above the top buttonhole and button diameter be? Okay, so this is kind of a design question. And to be honest with you, as a tech editor, I don't know that we have a great answer for this. A V shape will cross over me. I'm not doing a real great job here. It will cross over the two bands will cross over in order when they're buttoned. And that crossover has to happen where you want it to happen in your design. And then you would put your buttonholes start slightly below that. Now, what works for one design and one gauge may not work for another. So I'm thinking you might have to like swatch it and play around with it. What do you think?
So the button band the whole way down is going to be usually the same width, right? So when you
Right.
get to that V at the top, that same width is going to cross.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you are then, it sounded like she's got a shawl collar situation. So if you're
Yeah.
then going to apply a collar that's separate from the button band, I would just be sure that the button band allows enough room for that collar to fall open or do whatever it has to do.
So there's a few mechanics related to button bands. Number one, that top button is going to get a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
So you may actually want to do a horizontal buttonhole, not a vertical one, because you want it to, yes, you want a horizontal buttonhole so that the button can move a little bit with the stress of it being buttoned there. I don't know, that's just an idea. But you definitely want to make the buttonholes, the width of the buttonholes slightly smaller than the actual width of the buttons so that they stay closed. Otherwise, if the buttonholes are bigger than the button, then it's just going to pop open. So
Yeah, you need
there,
a, I mean, she was asking about the button diameter too. And
right.
I don't think you necessarily, I mean, if it's a really heavy collar, maybe you
Hmm.
will need a bigger button than you use on the
You
rest of the
might.
sweater.
Yeah.
But, keep your your buttonhole tight and make sure there's enough room up there for the collar to do what it has to do.
There needs to be some distance above like where it will cross, but the top button, if it's worked from the bottom up, you're not gonna, it's not like at a here where it's a deep V, so it is gonna land where it's gonna land. You just have to make sure it ends up where you want it to on the body
On the
in
body.
whatever size. So I would say swatch. Swatch, 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 swatch. Sometimes swatching is the only solution for these kind of problems. Do you think that answers it? I don't know. Feel free to instant message us again and let us know if we totally missed your question. I
Yeah, we
think,
could talk about it more. That was how I interpreted it,
yeah,
was how much space should there be.
yeah,
But if that, yeah, but yeah, if that doesn't answer it, please let us know and we'll talk about it more.
definitely. So, Creative Me DK, Christina, she says, "Hi from Denmark. One cannot design without paper." Agreed. I need paper a lot. I think I keep our recycling business, our recyclers in business. All right, are we ready to move to the next question?
I think so.
Okay, so the next question is when the pattern has the same mistake repeated, in other words, through the whole pattern, should the editor write a note on every single one?
So what I do is, if there is a error that repeats throughout the whole pattern, and I know what the fix is, because sometimes you don't. If I know what the fix is, I will highlight it, say this needs to be X, change throughout, and I will
Right,
highlight all the instances, but I will
right,
not write what the fix is on every single one. I'll say change throughout the pattern, and I will highlight it throughout the pattern. If it is
right.
something if it is something that I don't know what the fix is, I will say the same kind of thing. I'll write one note about it, and then I will say, then I'll highlight it throughout the pattern, but I will only note it one time. And I think it's important in that note to say, this happens in other places too, and I've highlighted them, and this is what the issue is. So that they don't see those future highlights and be like, what's that? I know that there are some designers I've worked with who really don't want you to highlight it every time because it can add a lot of noise when you have other edits
Visual
going on.
noise. Yeah.
Yeah, so it adds a lot, like more marks, when you've already got other things to alert yourself to, when you already know that that mistake is there. I do like to highlight all the instances anyway, though, because we miss them, right? Like if you have a page number wrong or a period missing and it's repeated, something simple like that, you might not see it unless it's highlighted. You might not notice it. So I do like to mark them all, but no, I don't write the note every single time. What do you do?
That's a great question. And I get the point of maybe you don't want to mark every single one because it's a time waster. And if you know that every single one is an error, then you don't want to add time marking,
Well, that's
marking,
why I don't
marking.
write it again and again. Yeah, because I don't want
Right.
to.
So that's
Yeah.
exactly what I do is in my annotating software, I'll choose one color highlight for that particular error. Let's say green. It's, all of the stitch counts are formatted incorrectly here. So then I'll highlight it green and then I will put my note in the same color and say, wherever you see green highlight, this needs to be adjusted throughout the pattern.
You just got a comment who said that. Do you color code it? Do you
Yeah, I
use a unique
color
color?
code. I color code everything in my patterns. And this also can be something else to think about if you're a tech editor. If you notice a consistency issue or a lot of style issues where it's just problem after problem with the same thing and you're going to mark it over and over again, you may want to actually keep two separate copies that are marked differently. So one copy of the pattern is marked with technical errors. So the things that have to be changed, the things that have to be corrected number wise or whatever else. And then you might want to do another copy with just style and consistency where the designer can make the decision about whether or not they want to fix periods or spaces or whatever else. So there is that two aspects of tech editing where things are definitely wrong and have to be corrected, need to be marked. But as far as style, you may be able to do a general note in an email or even a separate copy marking up for the things that are related to formatting and punctuation and stuff like that. Josephine says, I do the same. I color code the issues. Yeah, color code them. So it makes a lot of sense because that also helps with the visual noise. So if you have a pattern that has a lot of markings and you mark everything with orange highlight and orange type, then your designer may have a hard time seeing what belongs to what note goes where.
They have to
So
interpret every single highlighted mark. Whereas if you say all the green mean this,
mhm.
they don't have to look at the green one every time because they know what it's for and they don't need to address it. They already looked at it.
So I totally I use like my and I have to say that I've learned this from other editors working with other editors. So my colleague Lisa Beth Houchins, her markups look like a rainbow. They're just like colorful and beautiful. I tend to like stay with one color and then it ends up being a visual nightmare for the designer. So I love using multiple colors. Just as a shout out to the other tech editors, we really do work with other people and we love to learn from other people's methods. So feel free to ask us what is our method for doing something. And there's a bunch of us here right now that can answer questions about how we handle certain marking issues. Annotating a pattern takes time. I have found that I speed it up by using PDF Exchange Editor, which is a software that makes it super simple to annotate. And usually most of the designers can read it in whatever reading software they have in the PDF. Working in Word or Pages and doing track changes can take a lot more time. It's a pain. So I prefer to mark up with highlight and typing, annotating directly onto a PDF. And that seems to save a lot of time for my designers so that I'm not overcharging them.
That's what I do too. That's what I do too. And I don't color code or change my writing type color or my highlight color unless there's many things.
Mhm.
Because like if the color can be used as a tool for me to make the reading for them simpler and them checking it simpler, then I do change the color. But I don't like to change color a ton because it's like an extra step that I have to take.
Yeah,
Every time I use that typewriter tool or every time I use the highlighter, I have to change the color.
right.
So I only use that if I need it for the specific purpose that we described about, you know.
And
Yeah, PDF Exchange is
Joe
great.
is
I
with
use it too.
us.
Yeah, I use it
I'm
too.
like the evangelist for PDF Exchange Editor. The only
Uh,
downside of it, oh, that's what I,
TLC Stitches says she uses iAnnotate, and I did try
yes.
that, and I will tell you, I had trouble because um, a lot of my edits didn't go through. Like, I don't
Oh,
know what the problem was, with what kind of format they were getting the pattern in that I sent, but they didn't see half my edits didn't go through. And then I would email it to myself, and half my edits weren't there. So I stopped using that. Also, I wasn't doing it on like a desktop. Like I was doing it on an iPad, and it did not
mhm.
work out for me. But that was a long time ago too, like years ago. So hopefully it's improved
Hopefully
since
it's
then.
improved. So
Yeah,
PDF Exchange Editor is only on a Windows-based operating system. So you'll have to
right.
do some research to find something different if you use an Apple
Well, and does
or,
iAnnotate work well for you? Like,
yeah,
do you not have trouble? Dying to know.
yes.
Yeah, does it work well? Do you like it?
It didn't with when I first got my iPad like 5 years ago, then it didn't work real great, but now it
That's what I
does.
mean. Like, it was a long time ago that I tried that.
Yeah. So TLC Stitches, let us know if you think that iAnnotate works really well. Yeah, we'd like to refer our tech editors who use Apple
Hmm.
products to another product that works just as well. Um, so let's move on to the next question. I think Liz is here, so we can pick her brain a little bit more. Liz, you asked this question. I work with a a tech editor who suggests I put special knitting techniques at the end of the pattern instead of before the directions. Is this what you would do? If so, would you position some kind of note before the directions, encouraging the knitter to see the special techniques at the end? Now, it would be great, she says, if every knitter would read through the complete pattern before starting to knit, but that doesn't always happen. That's me. So, thanks. That's a good question.
Before we move on, Sarah,
Mhm.
TLC Stitches did answer. She said she flattens the PDF and emails it to herself to check it, and then it works well for her. So
Oh,
that
that's
is good to know.
great. Okay, good. Thank you
Good to know.
for sharing that with us because we'd love to pass on that information to other tech editors who use Apple
Yeah.
products. So I annotate it's the way to go, flatten it, and send it to yourself to double check. That's all there. Okay, so Liz, your question is special knitting techniques. Your tech editor is making the suggestion that you put it at the end of the pattern and not before the directions, and you're worried that the knitters won't see it or won't be able to find it or will not pay attention, and it's essential to the pattern instructions. What would we do? Christina, you want to field this one?
Well, the first thing I would just remember is that, it's up to you. And also I would ask the tech editor, what is the reason? I'm curious right now. Like, what is the reason that they think that's a better idea to have it at the end? Perhaps it's some sort of thinking like a index, like you have the main thing here, and then anything you need to refer to regarding it, you would have at the end, like an index. You would look up, oh, I have to look up German short rows. Oh, I have to look up the abbreviations. And I can kind of get that impetus. But for me, I like to have the special techniques up front so that it's the same way that I like everything to be up front before the knitter casts on. Also, another big reason to do this is because sometimes the way you do the techniques and the way you explain it in your pattern, if you've gone to the trouble to put it in the pattern and not just send them to a link to a tutorial, you may do it differently. There may be something different about this design that needs it to be done this way. And I think it's really helpful to have those special techniques and any special pattern stitches in the beginning before the directions and instructions start, so that the knitter has all that information and they actually, because they don't always read things at the end, and they might not know, they might see, just to use my example, German short rows, which there maybe aren't other ways to do it, but it's good to, anyway, that's what I think. But I would be curious what their motivation was, why they think it should be at the end. I would definitely ask why. But I think it should
Yes.
be up front just because it's that kind of stuff you need before you start knitting.
So my question for you is communicate. Have you communicated with your tech editor and asked them, hey, what's your reasoning behind this? Tech editors don't mark things for fun. Trust me. So maybe there's something that your tech editor sees that's an issue that would
Something specific to your pattern.
something specific to the formatting of your pattern or your instructions that they think, hey, it would be better here. And I'm not going to assume that I know what their intentions are. I will say that as a knitter, I really like for all of the extra stuff, like the materials list and the romance and the special techniques and the abbreviations and all that, to be in a separate place from the instructions so that the instructions I can paper print. So I can print up the instructions or just refer to the instructions in one part, and all the other stuff can be separate. What did she say? The reason she
The,
suggests is that the knitter may choose not to print, not to print the techniques if they already know them, plus the pattern will also come in an ebook format. Ha ha! So that was what you said, Christina, when we were reviewing this question. If it's a book format, then you may want everything to be in one place so that the knitter can print just the instructions that they need and refer to the special things in another glossary or another part of the pattern. I think that's reasonable. I don't know what your formatting is set up to be. So I would say either put it all in the front, like a like a intro material where it's
Yeah, like
all in one
what's it
place.
say? Techniques they already know them. Yeah, so but they still wouldn't, I mean, so I think, so maybe the tech editor's thinking they're going to want to print the gauge and the needles and the information and the yarn info and the pattern. So having those special techniques in the middle between those details and the instructions maybe would be inconvenient for the knitter. I mean, I can see that.
So this is an issue of
The
formatting.
patterns will also be available individually.
Yeah. So this is an issue of formatting. Liz, you're going to have to decide what you want.
Mm-hmm.
All of us tech editors will give you all kinds of great information. We may give you suggestions and all this, but ultimately it's your pattern, your decision, your final say. We're just here to help. And we may have some ideas that we think might work, but ultimately it's your decision and your ideas. So sometimes what the tech editor says can kind of get our brain working on a way to improve it. But we may ultimately go with another direction, which is totally fine because it's your design and your pattern. Creative Media Case says in the beginning, mention the technique and put the pages in, yeah,
The
at the
back.
end. Yeah, at the
And
back.
wasn't that in her question too?
Yes,
I think that
exactly.
was part of her question that she could do that. Like, see, like you could list the special techniques the same way that you would list the needles or list the yarn or list the
Mm-hmm.
notions. You could list the special techniques and say, see page X for
Mm-hmm.
instructions to these techniques. You could do
And
that.
and that would be
Um,
something that your tech editor may need to also check is that you refer to the correct page, the whatever
hmm
page it is too.
hmm Oh, and I would definitely put a page number. I wouldn't just say, obviously, you would put a page number, especially in like an ebook where ebooks tend to have more going on. There's more pages.
Mm-hmm.
If you need those, you might need those techniques for other things in the book, not just the one. I don't know. Definitely put a
And,
page number. But I guess you could do that. List it like you would list the notions,
mm-hmm.
but just to refer to the details of it will be in the back. I mean, it depends on the formatting, like you said.
And that's part of the non-design stuff is that you've got to figure out what looks good, what makes your pattern readable, what makes your pattern more usable. If your pattern's already formatted before you send it to testing, you may also ask your testers, hey, what do you think works best? What did you find that you had to refer to over and over again that you wish was in a different place?
Yeah, what do your
So,
knitters like?
mhm.
The people that like to knit your patterns, what do they like? How do they like it done? Testing
And
is so good for stuff like that.
definitely an aspect of testing that you can take advantage of. The other aspect of this still that I would also kind of push a little on is you need to have a template for your individual patterns that is kind of different from what an ebook would be. So if your template is set, then these issues are just consistent between your patterns. And that can make your brand really strong, is if your patterns always have the same format, where you have this first and then this and then this, then your knitters come to be familiar with it and it becomes an attractive aspect of purchasing one of your patterns is that they
Yeah.
already know how your patterns work because it's always in the same format. So I would ask you maybe to consider that, designing a template that works really well for all of your individual patterns. Ebooks will be a whole nother ball game, but definitely for your individual purchases. I hope that helps, Liz.
Consistency across patterns is a very
Mhm.
good idea. It's a really, really good idea. If you like, it's a very good idea to have consistency across patterns for all the reasons that you just said.
Can you let us know, Liz, if we answered your question? If you're still here, we'd love to know if you have any further clarification on that. But basically, it really is up to you. Um, all right, where are we at with time?
It's 12:25.
Okay, so we had a few other great questions come in via email. Those of you who are still here and have a question, please toss it into the comments below. We'd love to answer any questions that you might have about tech editing, pattern design, pattern writing, knitting, whatever. throw it into the comments and we'll do our best to answer if
Um,
we may
she
not be
said,
able. Go
said,
ahead.
yes, we answered her question and it was so helpful. So that is awesome. Good.
Oh, I'm glad
Good.
we were able to help you, Liz. Thanks for asking such a good question. I'm glad you did. Um, so I had a question come by email is how are designers expected to handle awkward, quote unquote, awkward increase or decrease rates? For example, say I have 70 sleeve stitches before the cuff starts and I need to make it 48 for the cuff. So in other words, it's like a balloon puff end of the sleeve that's going down to a narrow diameter. So I need to reduce 70 by 22 in the space of a single round, and it doesn't lend itself to a neat knit three, knit two together sort of thing. Is the designer expected to put together a complicated formula or just say in the next round decrease evenly by 22 stitches? I mean, I realize it's up to me and I can do either, but what is considered good practice? In the past, now this is a little background information, in the past, knitters have complained about both approaches. If the formula is complicated, they find it confusing. But if the instructions say just decrease by 22, they find it insufficiently informative. So I always struggle with how best to handle this. So any input from tech editors would be appreciated. That's a great question.
It is a
What
great
do you
question.
What do you think? I have my
Um,
own opinions. I want to hear what you have to say, Christina.
I think that just to answer her question about what is more commonly done, generally patterns have become less leaving things up to the knitter.
Right.
Patterns have become much more instructed, much more specific. I very rarely see things like decrease evenly around 22 stitches. Like when I was first knitting, everything was like that. It always said things like decrease evenly around 7 stitches or whatever. I never see that now in patterns I tech edit. They're always specific, most of the time. So I will say it totally is up to you. The only thing I would say is if you are going to write sometimes what designers will do, and this is an error. If you do say decrease evenly around by 22 stitches on the next round, that's correct. And if you spell it out, knit 3 together this many times, then at the end knit 2, whatever, right? That's correct too. But if you write, knit 3, knit 2 together around, lots of designers will do that, and they know that at the end of the round there's going to be a couple stitches that don't work out. That's something you can't do. You can't just write knit 3, knit 2 together around, unless that really works. So if that multiple of 5 stitches doesn't really work, then you can't write that. But I don't see decrease evenly around hardly at all anymore. I don't see that. Most patterns explain things now very specifically. That's what I have found.
And I think that's what the
But they're both
pendulum.
correct. They're both
They're
correct.
both correct. So and I think that's the problem is you're also dealing with customer service issues where you have complaining knitters who don't like it one way and don't like it the other way. So that's a struggle, I think, as a designer because we want to please our customers. Um, the pendulum is swung. So, like Christina mentioned, in the beginning of the mid-century knitting, even up until like the 90s, maybe early 2000s, knitting patterns could a whole sweater pattern could be like a paragraph or two, the whole sweater pattern, including all the sizes. So there was less information, there was a lot more assumption of knowledge for the knitters to have up front. And we have swung because of digital patterns and the internet and everything else, and a huge influx of new knitters into the knitting world. We've swung into instructions that are more detailed. There's what I call a lot of hand holding in patterns now, where almost every line and line instructions are super detailed. There's no assumption of knowledge or very little assumption of knowledge. Everybody knows what a knit is or what a purl is, right? But Generally speaking, line instructions are more detailed. So then that leads us to a problem because on the one hand, we want to take care of our knitters and encourage and people not to be frustrated with our pattern. But on the other hand, you have to decide what your brand is doing. What are my patterns doing? Who am I? What am I? What are my values in my knitting sphere? In my little knitting world of what I'm providing to my customers, what's important to me? And let me take a little bit of soul searching because there is absolutely nothing wrong with a 2-paragraph sweater pattern. It's
Right.
still correct, like what Christina said. And there's nothing wrong with the 25-page pattern that is writes out every single line for every single thing for and in detail so people can just follow along. So you need to ask yourself, is this pattern more advanced or is it for beginners? Number one, and make
Mm-hmm.
sure that that's clear in the introductory or the marketing materials so that people aren't frustrated by your instructions. And also decide, who are you as a designer and what is the general breadth of my patterns and what do I do and what do I not do? And you might also want to think about, who do I want to listen to? What is important with me and my knitters? What kind of knitters do I want to attract to my patterns? So the suggestion that I made to the person via email was, it's okay to do both. So say, decrease evenly by 22 stitches across the next row as follows, and then give the line instruction. So you can do a hybrid instruction where you give people the room to do it themselves and to just jump in and decrease by 22 stitches is what I would do. Or they can just follow the instructions exactly. Both are correct and you can include both. So you've got to, this is almost like an identity issue. I don't know, Christine, if you would agree with me, but I
Well,
think
I
you
think a
have to
lot.
decide what you want to say. How
Yeah,
far do you
you
want to
do.
go?
You do. Um, a lot of the times these patterns have become this way, I think, because of the way we communicate now. We're on social media, we message each other, email is so easy. There's so many ways to communicate with designers and people working on patterns, and so to avoid confusion or questions, I think is another reason why directions and instructions have become more explicit. Myself personally, if I were writing patterns, I'd go out of my mind with all the explicitness, like it's so much to write. But then when I do sit down to think about, like, that's why it's so important to be intentional. You know what I mean? When you do sit down to write a pattern, for example, um, inches and centimeters. Well, I live in America and we use the inches, and so I would write the pattern with inches. But when I think about who might be knitting my pattern or who I want to be able to knit my pattern, what I want it to be available for, I have to include centimeters because I don't want it to only have the breadth of America, right? And so it's the same thing for anything. If you are writing an advanced pattern and you don't expect beginners to work it and you don't think it would be good for them, then maybe you don't need to be so explicit. But if you are hoping anybody can work your pattern, you know, you might need to, just think about who your pattern is serving, what you want it to serve, and also how you want to say it, you know? So there's really a lot of ways you can do it depending on what your intentions are for your brand and for your pattern and what you're trying to accomplish, right? What your goals are.
And what the end result of this fabric is. So there may be instances where you need to specify how to decrease in order for them to get the same result as the sample. In other words, for them to just decrease evenly 22 stitches may not cut it for the result that you need to get in the fabric. They may actually have to decrease in a certain way in order to get the same result in all the sizes. So there's that aspect too. You may need to be specific in order to make the instructions more accurate. Creative Me DK says knit 2, knit 3, double decrease times so many times, end with knit 2. Would that work? Absolutely. So here's the other aspect of this is you can, when you're trying to decrease a ton of stitches, there's all kinds of formulas that you can use to make it even. But you can also just load in your line some stitches at the beginning that are worked plain, some stitches at the end that are worked plain, and then that multiple in between that's going to work the best. But it does make it more difficult if you got 10 or 11 sizes and how to write that line. I have some clients who actually write out every size. Each size has its own decrease instructions or increase instructions, and that can work too. If you have space in your pattern, you're not doing a printed
Yeah,
pattern.
sometimes it has to be broken up by size. I do want to say one thing about Creative Me DK's comment. In the line she wrote, it's knit 2, knit 3 together, decrease X times, end with knit 2, which I'm assuming that would be there only would be 2 stitches left, is how she means it.
Right.
Sometimes designers will write, knit 2, knit 3, knit 2 on the last time, end with knit a different number knit. Like,
right.
I don't like that. That's a different instruction. I don't like that. So
it could be misunderstood.
It could be misunderstood. If you're writing complete instructions like that, you can't say, but on the last one, knit 5. Because no. That's just my opinion.
Right.
Because it can be misunderstood and it cannot be clear. But if there's only 2 stitches left, you can end with knit 2.
Yeah.
We got a comment. I appreciate teaching patterns, designs with elements that are new to me and have explicit instructions.
Yeah.
See, so it's helpful for everybody to have, like she's teaching the designs,
And so I would say, and that's great. But as a designer, you have to decide, okay, is this what I want to provide to my customers? Are my patterns going to be teaching patterns? There are designers that is their modus operandi. They are fantastic at providing a teaching platform within their patterns. So I'm thinking of like Patty Lyons, who does knit-alongs that are all teaching, that kind of thing, where there are designers that is what they do. And then there are other designers that's not
Nope.
their thing. And my opinion is that's great. I think your pattern should reflect you and your brand and what your design intention is, not just in the design itself, but also in how it's formatted and written. And this is a great way to work together with your tech editor too, is just to say, hey, this is what I want to accomplish, and this is my goals, this is what I intend, so that your tech editor can help you line that up with it and can also give you some feedback when you might have strayed a little bit away from your goals as a designer.
Well, and that's why so much of what we're doing, I mean, yes, we're checking for things that are actual mistakes that have to be corrected, but also so much of what we're doing as editors is suggesting things. Like, just because the way I'm reading it, for clarity, this needs to change, or for it to be, more clear or more consistent, it needs to be this way. You might be like, yeah, no, no, I don't agree. It's not what I want. I don't need that to be so clear. Or like I might say, with the decrease 22 evenly around, I might say, do you want to write out how that's going to be done? Because maybe somewhere else in the pattern, it is written out how it's done, something similar, but that's why so much of what we're doing is suggesting. Like, it really is up to you, because this is you, right? These patterns are your babies, and the best way the way they're going to be the best is for your voice and the way you want to do it to be done as well as it can be in that pattern, right?
Yeah.
So I would always ask your tech editor, if it's something you would disagree with, have a little chat about it. Geez, I wouldn't have done it that way. Why do you think it's a good idea to do it that way?
Yeah, we call that stetting. It's a stet. When you override your editor's suggestion, you're like, nope, I got to do it my way. And it's totally okay as long as what is actually incorrect is corrected.
Right.
So the suggestions from your tech editor can totally be ignored if it goes beyond what you want to do for your pattern. So
And we
Here's
get
another
another
comment.
comment. For inclusiveness, why do you think modular patterns haven't reemerged as the way to write a pattern?
Can you define
Mm.
what a modular pattern is? Because I'm not sure. I have in my mind a different, all kinds of ideas of what a
What you're
modular pattern.
wearing.
What I'm wearing is not modular. It was a one piece, just seamed at the shoulder. Um, maybe uh, wrong dashes. So tell me what give me an example of what a modular pattern for what you think a modular pattern is. Like where there's different parts that you can choose to put together. Um,
Well, the way I think of it is what you're wearing. When you change the numbers based on like a formula and it
mhm.
all comes together and it's all relative. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the Elizabeth Zimmerman patterns. Wrong dash,
Oh,
that's funny. Do you know what I'm saying?
when I think of a modular pattern, I think like you can choose different body shapes and different sleeve shapes and or different like alternative constructions. So um, Pacific Northwest Gale and Company, you got to define modular for us. I know you're probably typing furiously as we speak.
I know.
Uh, all right, we
Our
have more
world is not
questions.
instamatic enough.
It's not, even though we're on Insta. Um,
Oh, here she is. There's a chart with sizes listed across the top and the respective numbers listed below.
oh, so like Ann Budd patterns. Like Ann Budd has a series of books that are just like this. So she did the handy book of knitting patterns and
Top down sweaters.
top down sweaters is one of my favorites. I so that's a really good question. I think everything comes and goes. Now, for inclusiveness, why do you think modular patterns haven't reemerged as a way to write a pattern? I think they are.
Yeah.
Um, Swanky Emu Knits has a for basically where her patterns you plug in your measurements and it generates the patterns for you. Um, she's even running workshops for designers to help them to apply that to their own designs. I think I think we are kind of moving in this direction. For some designers are. It takes a little bit more technical savvy and understanding where things can go wrong. Custom fit is modular in that sense, if that's what you define as modular, where you plug in your size. Um,
Do
but
you mean just having the numbers in tables?
yeah,
Because that's
which
certainly, that's just a different style of writing, I think.
exactly.
You know, some designers like to write with tables and some don't. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I recently edited a pattern like this. When you have so many sizes, it can be really nice to be able to just have the numbers all on a table over here and your instructions stay nice and clean and you just put your number in.
Hmm.
And then you're not looking at all these sea of numbers all the time. I have a bunch of vintage patterns from the 40s through 60s that have children through large men.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I have a bunch of those too. And the great part about those is I mean, my mom also knit them from like a sweater wheel, like where you spin the dial and you choose your thing. Generally, those work fantastic for shapes that don't, 'cause sweater shapes that don't have a lot of shaping.
Right.
So they're drop sleeve or they're raglan and they're straight body. Um, when you're talking about shaping in general, it can get a little tricky
Mm.
because as far as a woman's shape, sometimes can you're dealing with something that's not straight up and down for some women. So I
We also know a lot more about bodies now. And I think that
yes.
some of the ways those were done really weren't very accurate or gave good fit. You know, we're learning a lot more about bodies. We're learning a lot more about the relationships between the points on the body and how they grow or don't grow in proportion to the bust, which is like the main measurement. And so, sometimes to get good fitting sweaters, it can't just be the exact same thing done in every size for every single size from baby to adult. You can't do just the exact same thing and get a perfectly fitting sweater. Um, I think
And
sometimes it's not possible. Like you said, if you have any kind of shape that's not just a basic,
a lot of the vintage designs have more ease. So you have some wiggle room there as far as fit. Um, as far as for men's and children's designs, there's definitely a lot more ease in some of those designs. I don't know if I have a good answer for you, Gail.
it's good to talk about though.
Twiggy in the 60s might have put a period on that. Yeah, I'm not so sure. Uh, it's definitely something to discuss, and I do think that there's swings in design and in what is popular and what works and what doesn't work. We see there's a cycle. A lot of times, what was popular comes back in, and then it swings back out again. So, um, oh, Liz wants to see our hand knits, Christina.
It's not hand knit. It's not hand knit. Sarah's wearing all the beautiful hand knits. Mine are in my closet. This is from a store.
You've been found out.
Oh my God. From a store. I'm like blushing.
I can show you my.
Come on,
show
let's
you.
see.
All right. And I haven't. And it's so funny because I haven't taken any pictures of it yet. It's so embarrassing.
You guys are the first ones to see.
I have socks. I have socks on the needles.
No, we want to see your coat. Come on.
Socks.
Put those down.
All right. I'm gonna back way up. This is kind of embarrassing. All right. It's a sweater. And it has a hood.
Isn't it awesome? I love that thing.
And the hood buttons on. So I took I cheat. I used a ready-to-wear hood from my favorite jacket, and I just traced the shape and then knit it. Uh, Thanks, Liz. I need to take pictures, and I had promised one of a Kate that I would do a slow-mo, and I haven't done it. I'm slow. I'm more than slow on the slow-mo. Okay. So I think we still have some questions. How much time do we have? We have 10 minutes. We can do one more.
Okay, one more.
Okay, we're going to address something really hard. Are you ready?
Okay.
So Christina did a whole blog post to answer this question. So thanks, Liz. She says she's so clever to add a hood to this Elizabeth Zimmerman pattern. Yes, so this is the adult surprise jacket by Elizabeth Zimmerman, and it took forever to knit. It's a huge gob of knitting, and it weighs about 4 pounds, but it's very warm. So Christina this week published what might be considered contentious,
perhaps
about proportional ease in knitting patterns. So this is going to be an ongoing discussion. We're just going to kind of touch it a little bit today. I would suggest that you guys go to Christina's blog post.
It's at the link in my bio on Instagram if you want to read it. Obviously, we can't go into as much detail right now, but
no, we can't.
It's there.
I'm just going to preface this by saying that a lot of this is our own personal opinion of what we see works and doesn't work in pattern as far as sizing. So just a little bit of a definition is that there's an ongoing discussion on Instagram and in other places about the use of proportional ease in sizing versus using the same ease across sizes. And what that means is when you knit a sample size, compared the sample garment to the body size that you knit it for. So let's say, for instance, you knit a garment to fit body size 40-inch chest. And that sample garment, that sweater, has a certain amount of ease at the different points on the body. So let's say it has 2 inches of positive ease at the bust and an inch of positive ease at the underarm depth and a couple inches at the neck. In other words, that sample compared to the body size that it's knit for has a certain amount of ease. And there is a way of grading where you add the same amount of ease all the way up the size chart and all the way down the size chart so that all of the sizes have the same or about the same ease applied to their body shape and size. So that when they knit the sweater, they get the same amount of ease as what is pictured in the sample. Now, the other way of grading that is being discussed is to add a proportional amount of ease. And the proportional amount of ease is where you would use a percentage. So let's say that 2 inches of ease at the bust is a certain percentage of the total bust circumference in that body size. Then you would add that percentage of ease to the different parts all the way up and all the way down as kind of a form of a ratio. So Christina wrote a long blog post on it. We've had a lot of discussions on this in the last week, and I think we probably need to devote a whole Q&A to it, and more information on it because we're going to run out of time here. But just as a general idea of what we personally agree, and Josephine says
She agrees with us.
to
Josephine is a tech editor.
She's not just a tech editor.
No,
she's a very accomplished grading. She grades patterns for a living too.
Right.
So my perspective on this, you can go read Christina's opinion. I haven't written a blog post on this, but my perspective is you have to make the pattern in whatever way you get there. You have to make it so that when the knitter knits it and puts it on their own body, it has the same fit as what they see in the sample on the sample model. If you can't achieve that same fit, then your pattern is not producing what you promised to the knitter. So there are some examples where I use proportional ease when I'm grading, but only on certain parts that I don't have good body information on. So I might start my numbers with, for the neckline, like if the neckline opening is 140% of the neck body circumference, I might start there to get an idea of where I'm at related to the body size, but I wouldn't stay there. I would try to get as close to the body measurements plus the design ease as I can get so that the fit is the same across all sizes. Some people believe that proportional sizing should have more ease for a larger body. And we disagree with that for a couple of reasons. Christina, can you take it from there? Why would you disagree?
I think that because it's not going to fit the same. I understand that in other things in the world, objects and other things, if you make them bigger, you're going to have and more spaces around them. It makes sense and it will look correct. But on a body, you have to think, if this is your body and you have that much ease outside it, making the body bigger is not going to mean that more ease will make it look the same. It will make it look different. Just think about how a sweater fits that is very fitted. That's how it's supposed to look. And that's how it looks in the picture that they see. It's very fitted. You can see your curves. You can see it goes up to here. You can't fit clothes underneath it. Okay. If you add extra ease in larger sizes or less ease in smaller sizes, it's not going to look like that.
So like a bralette pattern, let's say,
right,
or something like that. A zero ease garment.
It will look different. And, You said something that made me want to say something, and now I went on this big whole thing and I forgot.
We could talk about this for about an hour and a half, so we won't, we don't have
Right.
to go far with it. Um,
But, you know, it's not, oh God, I'm so mad. I had something I was going to say and I forgot. Oh, that makes me so mad. It's on the tip of my tongue. Man.
oh, we'll come back to it. You know what? We'll be back here in a month and we can talk. We're going to pick up where we left off because we have to go in a minute anyways.
Oh, just think, maybe just to leave you with this, to think about it. If,
Yes,
you know,
think about.
you're not just working with like a pencil, right? You're working with a body that has many different points and many things happening at the same time. And if
Hmm.
you add extra ease across the sizes and make bigger sizes have more ease and smaller sizes have less ease from the sample that you made, that you know how it fits and that's your picture and that's what it's supposed to fit like, that's what it's supposed to look like. If you change that here, then it's going to change it here. It's going to
Yes,
make your
it
whole
changes at the
sleeve,
underarm.
it's going to make your whole sleeve be down here, right?
Hmm.
It's going to make your neck be wider, okay? And if you're adding extra ease in the arm, because that's what you think you should be doing for larger sizes, then your cuff's going to be bigger.
Right.
Everything is related in a body. Everything is connected. So everything that it's all related. And anytime you add more ease than the design intends, it's going to
Hmm.
change now the next part of the sweater.
Right.
And it's not going to look the same.
It
It's not
won't.
going to look the same. And it's not, and then you're defaulting on your promise to the knitter.
All right, so we got to wrap it up here.
Date
And
for next month. So it'll be the third, my
third
calendar, the
Monday
third Monday of the month. So that would be
and
the
Gail says
21st, December
21st,
21st.
December 21st. Oh, right before Christmas. So interesting how this relates to garment construction as a sewist. Knitting stretches, so it's a lot like the difference between sewing with knit fabrics and wovens. Yeah, it
Mm.
is. And we're just going to start this discussion today because we don't have time to get into it. I have so much to say on this, and I know Christina does too, so much that she wrote a dissertation on her blog, which I
It
highly
is so
recommend that you
long.
go
I tried so
read.
hard to make it,
No,
you know,
but
I
you
tried so
got
shorter, but there's a lot happening.
right. Hey, my phone's about ready to die, so we got to jam so that I can upload this video. We'll see you guys on the 21st of December. I hope you guys are all safe, happy, healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Please take care of yourselves. Send us questions, and we'll talk to you next month. Take care of yourselves. Bye.
Bye.